Welcome back, scholars, to our Digital Academy. I am Professor Spark. Whether we are turning the pages of a timeless novel, our mission remains the same. Will today's sweep us into the concert hall? Let's find out together.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are taking on an absolute titan of world literature, Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. Now, I know it's a monumental 1,200-page masterpiece, the kind of book that famously took Tolstoy's wife copying it by hand 7 times just to get the manuscript done. It definitely intimidates a lot of people. But today we're going to cut right through all that. We're going to distill both its sweeping, epic narrative and its profound philosophical insights. By the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why it's considered one of the greatest achievements in human history. So let's just jump right in.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the world before the storm, war, peace, and the soul, the 1812 invasion, the search for meaning, who really shapes history, and finally, the foundation of civilization.
All right, Part 1, The World Before the Storm.
We drop right into 1805, anchoring ourselves in its glamorous yet seriously flawed world of Russian high society, right before the chaos of history truly kicks off. Now, rather than following a single hero, Tolstoy brilliantly uses 3 contrasting families to kind of mirror the immense shifts that are about to rock Russia. You've got the Bezukovs, with Pierre, who's this awkward, kind-hearted outsider that suddenly inherits massive wealth. Then you have the Bolkonskys, specifically Prince Andrei, who is totally disillusioned with how superficial high society is. And finally, the Rostovs. They embody this incredible warmth and emotional vitality, especially the wildly spirited Natasha. These distinct personalities are the lenses through which we're going to experience a rapidly changing world.
And we're going to follow them as things accelerate incredibly fast. We go from those pristine, glittering salons of 1805 straight into the grim reality of early military conflicts, like the Battle of Austerlitz. From there, it's a straight shot into the absolute fiery destruction of Napoleon's 1812 invasion, the devastating Battle of Borodino, and ultimately, the agonizing French retreat. We are talking about a massive, massive scale of time, consequence, and sheer human endurance.
Moving on to Part 2, War, Peace, and the Soul. Let's focus in on how these specific characters react when their quiet, privileged bubbles are suddenly burst by the drumbeats of war. Prince Andrei goes into the Battle of Austerlitz seeking grand military glory. He really wants to be a hero. But after he's gravely wounded, he literally finds himself lying on the dirt of the battlefield, staring up at the vast, endless sky. And in that moment, he has one of literature's most profound spiritual awakenings. It hits him like a ton of bricks, the total emptiness of fame. He suddenly realizes just how completely insignificant his personal ambition is when compared to the infinite universe.
Meanwhile, back in the city, Pierre is fighting a totally different kind of battle. Like we mentioned, he unexpectedly inherited one of Russia's largest fortunes. But it turns out, mountains of cash do not buy clarity. He's struggling, drifting aimlessly, desperately searching for some kind of purpose. He tries high society, intellectual circles. He even stumbles into a profoundly unhappy marriage to the beautiful but wildly manipulative Elaine, and then tries Freemasonry. Yet every single one of these paths just leaves him completely empty.
And then there's Natasha Rostova. The real takeaway here is that long before the physical, actual war reaches their doorsteps, characters like Natasha are already fighting these intense emotional battles. She goes through a beautiful engagement to Andrei, but during the time they're forced apart, she makes a very painful mistake and is tragically seduced by the reckless Anatoly Karagin. Her engagement shatters, and she plunges into absolute despair. So they're all navigating deep love, betrayal, and massive disillusionment way before the cannons ever fire on Russian soil.
Okay, Part 3, the 1812 invasion.
This is the absolute climax of the narrative. Napoleon's forces cross into Russia in 1812, bringing total, unimaginable devastation to literally everyone we've just been talking about. Tolstoy doesn't pull any punches here. He strips away every ounce of romanticism about war to show us the raw, brutal reality. The sheer scale is staggering. You have the bloody Battle of Borodino, the strategic but utterly heartbreaking abandonment of Moscow, the literal burning of the city causing massive civilian suffering, and then, finally, the freezing, total collapse of Napoleon's campaign. It is just pure, unadulterated chaos.
Right in the middle of this nightmare, Pierre's life takes a radical left turn. He foolishly decides to stay behind in burning Moscow with his incredibly impulsive, naive plan to assassinate Napoleon. What was he thinking? Naturally, he gets captured by French soldiers instead, but here's the crazy part. It's in captivity, stripped of literally all his wealth, his titles, and his comfort, that he befriends a common peasant named Platon Karatayev. And it's through Karatayev's simple, unshakable faith and pure acceptance of life that Pierre's entire outlook is profoundly and permanently transformed.
Now contrast Pierre's miraculous survival with Prince Andrei's fate. It's incredibly tragic. Andrei is mortally wounded at Borodino. During his final days, he's actually nursed by Natasha. And it is there, on his deathbed, that Andrei finally lets go of his lifelong intellectual pride. He achieves true spiritual peace by doing what is arguably the hardest thing imaginable. He unconditionally forgives Natasha, and he even forgives Anatol, the man who ruined their engagement. Andrei really embodies Tolstoy's core belief here, which is that ultimate spiritual enlightenment usually requires intense suffering.
Which brings us to part 4, the search for meaning. When the actual, literal smoke of 1812 clears, we zoom out to the philosophical core of this whole explainer. Because Tolstoy wasn't just writing history, he was exploring the human soul. How should one live? Right there, that is the beating heart of the entire 1,200-page work. It's the engine driving every single major character's journey. It's the ultimate question Tolstoy is putting to his characters, and by extension, he's asking us too.
And he makes it super clear that the answer isn't found in some dusty, abstract philosophy. Just look at Pierre's incredible moral evolution. He goes from this socially awkward, aimless rich kid, suffers through terrible manipulation and failed intellectual pursuits, gets thrown right into the absolute crucible of imprisonment where his ego is completely destroyed, and where does he end up? He finds humility, emotional maturity, and genuine inner peace. He learns that true fulfillment is in ordinary human kindness and real lived experience, not in grand theories.
All right, part 5, who really shapes history? Now we are going to dive into one of Tolstoy's most radical ideas, and it completely upends how we look at world leaders. You've probably heard of the great man theory, this classic belief that history is dictated by the sheer willpower and genius of highly influential individuals, like kings or conquering generals. Well, Tolstoy firmly, completely rejects that. He argues that history is actually driven by millions of individual, ordinary actions, random accidents, and massive social forces that are completely beyond any single person's control. You see this perfectly when you look at the two commanders. Tolstoy's take on free will and destiny is stark. On one hand, you have Napoleon. Tolstoy doesn't show him as some omnipotent genius. He shows him as an arrogant guy who mistakes sheer coincidence for mastery. He's totally operating under the illusion that his personal willpower controls the chaos of a battle. On the other hand, you've got the Russian commander, Kutuzov. Kutuzov succeeds precisely because he knows he's not entirely in control. He humbly lets events unfold naturally because he recognizes that war is just unpredictable chaos. It is a brilliant contrast between the illusion of power and the humble acceptance of reality.
Finally, part 6, the foundation of civilization. As we wrap up this explainer, we have to look at where Tolstoy finds the ultimate anchor for humanity when empires are literally burning to the ground. The title of the book itself is this profound duality. War is destruction, pride, political ambition, grand illusions, and total chaos. But peace is family, love, memory, forgiveness, spiritual growth. It's the quiet beauty of ordinary life. Tolstoy is adamant that genuine human greatness is never found on a blood-soaked battlefield. It's found in everyday compassion.
And we see this perfectly realized at the end of the narrative. After all the heartbreak and suffering, Natasha, who really is the resilient, vital spark of this whole story, and a completely transformed Pierre finally unite. But this isn't some fleeting fairy tale romance. Their marriage is built on mutual understanding, real sacrifice, and genuine love. They are the living proof that while empires collapse and military victories fade into the history books, it is the enduring, quiet relationships of family that actually sustain us across generations.
Which leaves us with a massive question. Tolstoy wove these ordinary lives into world-changing events over a century and a half ago, but honestly, it is just as relevant today. Will you chase the grand illusions of historical greatness and ambition, or will you seek your true meaning in everyday compassion and the wisdom of ordinary life? It's a choice we all have to make. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the explainer. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.